Maplewood and South Orange, and I want to welcome the candidates, our moderator, and all the members of the audience to our forum tonight. It's co-sponsored by the PTA President's Council, represented by a number of people here, some of whom you'll meet. And I'd also specifically like to recognize and thank Susie Adamson, everyone stand up, Susie, and for the President's Council for her partnership in organizing this event. Before we begin, I'll say a few words about the League of Women Voters. We're a trusted, nonpartisan political organization, and our members have worked for 95 years to improve our government and engage citizens in the decisions that impact their lives. We operate at a national, state, and local levels through more than 800 state and local leagues. And we're in all 50 states as well as the District of Columbia and the Virgin Islands, not to mention Hong Kong. While we never endorse candidates, we are directly involved in efforts to expand participation in elections and our democracy and give a voice to all Americans. We focus on voter information, voter service projects, and issue advocacy, particularly pertaining to sound government practices. Our overarching goal is to make democracy work for all citizens. If you'd like to learn more about the League's work, and you may have seen our table out there, we have a number of pamphlets and other information that you may wish to pick up. We also have some applications for absentee ballots, if that's something that you would like to do before the election. You'll find those among our materials. Now, tonight we're very grateful to have a number of local news outlets covering the event. So I'd like to mention them that Soma TV is recording our forum, and it will rebroadcast tonight's event on the channels that are noted at the end of your candidate bio statements. So on the last page, we have those channels listed. They will also post the video on YouTube. We have a reporter from the Village Green, and we have somebody recording this event for Some More streaming radio service. Do I have that right?
Sometimes Maplewood online radio. South Orange, Maplewood online radio.
Yes, South Orange, Maplewood online radio. And you can find that at that website.org, yes? Okay, somemore.org. Tonight, we also invite your participation in the event. So if you have questions for the candidates, please use one of the note cards that we provided at the tables outside, or we have some people distributing them. We will have people in the aisles with those cards and with pencils if you need them. And we'll collect those and vet them during the first part of our program, and then we'll pose as many of those questions as we can get to during the second question and answer period of the evening. Just keep in mind that you can address your questions to an individual candidate, but when the question is posed, if it is, all the candidates will have the opportunity to respond to it. And so without further ado, and thanks again for coming, I'd like to introduce our moderator, Diane Gallo, who is from a different League of Women Voters, the League of Women Voters from Summit.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you for coming. We have a very good program for you tonight because the candidates have answered several questions that the League gave to them ahead of time. But before we get to them, we have opening statements. After the opening statements, which the candidates will deliver, then we'll have the League questions answered, and then after that, your questions will be answered. The order of speaking has been decided by lottery. The candidates' opening statements, they pick numbers out of a hat, very simple. So that order determines who will speak first. The closing statements are simply the opposite of that. Each candidate will have 1.5 minutes for an opening statement. And after those statements have concluded, we will move into the part about the questions that the League and the President's Council have prepared ahead of time. So, the first person to speak for opening statements is Madhu
Okay. Good evening, everyone, and thank you to the League and the President's Council for hosting us tonight. My name is Madhu Pai. I am a former Maplewood resident and a current South Orange resident. 10 years ago, my husband and I had the very original idea of moving here from Brooklyn. We could not be happier to have put down roots in such a great and diverse community. We are the proud parents of 2 children, a 6th grader at Psalms and a 3rd grader at Jefferson. I'm pursuing my 2nd term on the Board of Education, where I currently serve as First Vice President. I have some other jobs too. The first is a publicist at a global communications company where I serve as a Senior Vice President. Also, though I'm no longer on a PTA board, I remain an active volunteer in our schools. Most importantly, I am a mom to a sweet and quiet middle schooler who sometimes struggles to meet her potential, and a son whose boy energy needs to be tamed by more challenge. I've definitely got my hands full. So why run again? I believe we're on the cusp of something great in our school district. We have a new superintendent who has the right focus on improving district operations while promoting well-paced innovation. We have an exciting new policy that opens up opportunities for increased access and puts more choice in the hands of students and parents, something I have been advocating for since 2012. I'm thrilled to be running with Wayne and Peggy. I believe we're uniquely positioned as the candidates with the vision, leadership, experience, and curricular expertise to lead the important work that will now take our district from good to great.
Thank you. The next person is Dorcas Lind.
Good evening. Good evening. Thank you to the League, and thank you everyone for coming out this evening. The talent and vision of students, parents, and educators in our district is powerful and far-reaching. Our district has the potential, in my mind, to serve as a role model for academic excellence for the state and for the country, and I truly believe this. I am prepared to work on behalf of the community to help our district enter a new era and thrive under the leadership of our new superintendent, Dr. Ramos, who encourages all of us to think about how to prepare for a world yet unimaginable, and that's what our children are facing, a new reality. Our district faces serious issues around access and equity, where there are district-wide dynamics that inhibit our students from reaching their fullest potential. It hurts all of the children in our community. We struggle with incomplete, ineffective, and sometimes contradictory communications, critical pieces of information, including budget details, district and school level policies around special education and placement, and decisions around testing and leveling procedures and measurement are often complex and buried in district documents that are inaccessible to some parents. If I am elected, I will effectively work to shepherd the implementation of access and equity, parlaying my diversity and inclusion experience and expertise, identifying fiscal approaches that will address our $20 million deficit, and keep art studio, field, or stage activities in our schools.
Thank you. And the next person to speak is Wayne Eastman.
Thank you, Diane. Good evening, and thank you very much to the League of Women Voters and to President's Council. I'm Wayne Eastman, President of the South Orange Maplewood Board of Education, and tonight, running with my first Vice President, Madhu Pai, and Peggy Friedson, I'm as excited, more excited, in all the times that I've been on the board, which is since 2006. Just 2 nights ago, the board unanimously passed an access and equity policy that says in substance that all parents and students in the South Orange Maplewood School District shall enjoy a choice of educational programs. I crafted the heart of this policy right after becoming president, and Madhu and I, as she mentioned, ran on it in 2012. I think we're really poised, and I think we're the team with Peggy's expertise on curricular and professional development issues to really help us soar. Second, leading a board is about accountability. Accountability on the dollars and accountability on student performance. We are also the team that's the right team to mind the storm. On tax, in our tax-stressed populace, we are the ones who are holding the gates for fiscal accountability. Finally, we are all in for our public schools. We strongly believe, yes, we do in northern New Jersey and the other suburbs have, yes, the best public schools in the world, and at the same time, we must be intelligently critical. Expect more. Soar, mind the store, and yes, let's expect more.
Thank you. And now Marion.
Hello, just want to make sure the mic is working. Fabulous. Good evening, my name is Marion Brad, and I'm running for school board with Team Soma 2015. My running mates, Chanel Roberts and Alyssa Malaspina. I have lived in Maplewood for over 14 years, and my 2 children attend our local public schools. I am a non-practicing attorney who has been working in financial and legal journalism for over the last 2 decades. I myself am a proud product of the New York City public school system and the great American public university system. I believe in public schools. I believe that strong public schools are the cornerstone to American democracy. They are truly the great equalizers. As a parent and a public education advocate, I have been in the trenches fighting for our schools and our children's right to the best public education possible. I am a local organizer for Save Our Schools New Jersey, a grassroots organization of parents who believe that every child in the Garden State should have access to a high-quality free education. 4 years ago, I led the opposition to the boutique Mandarin immersion charter school that attempted to open here. I spent months working closely with former Superintendent Brian Osborne, as well as members of the board, to prevent this charter school from opening and siphoning millions of dollars from our already cash-strapped system. I want to serve on the board to use my experience as an education advocate, my experience as a parent, and my proven ability to make change happen here to make our Maplewood South Orange public schools the best that they can be. Thank you.
Thank you. And now we have Chris Saban.
Hi, I'm Chris Saban. My family moved to Maplewood in 1972 from Brooklyn. I graduated from Columbia High School in class of '83. I went to school here at Maplewood Middle, so I remember things well. I'm a single dad of 3 fantastic kids, 2 at South Orange Middle and 1 at Columbia. Growing up, I learned the importance and the value of education. My mother, Saber Saban, served on the Board of Education for 2 terms, from '85 to '91, including 4 years as president. South Orange and Maplewood are home for me, and although the community has evolved to become more diverse and inclusive, our district is slow to do the same. We are facing a growing list of shortcomings that impact way too many from all backgrounds. The most prevalent one is the achievement gap. Closing the achievement gap will require successful engagement and doing things differently. We need to challenge ourselves, teachers, and parents to overcome our kids every step of the way, never underestimating or giving up on. Now, I understand how important it is to connect and to engage. I do it in my professional life, and I bring together diverse groups of people, creating awareness and building partnerships and supporting the common good. And I want to do the same thing here. I want to bring my experiences and my educational background to this board and make sure that we can together come and be a part of this community. Furthermore, now is the time for change, and I want to be a part of this change. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Anne-Marie Manning.
Thank you, President's Council and the League of Women Voters for organizing this forum. My running mate, Chris Saban, and I look forward to sharing our prepared remarks, as well as the extensive time you have set aside for audience questions. I have lived in South Orange for 10 years with my husband and my 2 wonderful sons. Dilshire is away at boarding school, and Sumer is in 8th grade at SOMS. I am the director of South Orange Country Day Preschool, and it really is the best job I've ever had. It uses all my skills, my education background, the finance skills learned during my time at Chase, and it also demonstrates my commitment to this fantastic community. We use a child-centric approach, which just means that we think about every decision and every classroom interaction from the perspective of what that child needs at that time. It is really my true joy to greet 80 students as they come to school every day, ready to learn, full of excitement and curiosity. And that is what I want for every child in our district, to feel safe, valued, and respected so they can come to school ready and motivated to learn. Our district must make challenge and growth its top priority for every student, from struggling learners to high achievers, from disaffected students to those with disabilities, and remembering the forgotten middle. To do that, we need to rebuild trust by ensuring, oh, that was quick, sorry.
Thank you. And now we go to Alyssa.
Hi, everybody. I'm Alyssa Malaspina. If I'm talking loud, it's because I actually have a hearing issue. I have an ears disease, and so I sometimes can't regulate my voice. So if you hear me talking loud, I'd be the one who would have the 504 in your schools. And that's why I am like that. I have always known I wanted to be an educator, and I've spent the last 17 years in the field as a history teacher, a teacher librarian, and as a media and technology supervisor. As many of you know, 9 of those years was spent at the South Orange Maplewood School District, at first at CHS and later at South Orange Middle School. There's a good chance I have the pleasure of working with some of your children. The last few years have been a roller coaster ride. In the face of dysfunction and poor management, many excellent teachers and administrators, including myself, have left. And some parents, even sitting board members and those up here running for school board, have made the decision to pull their children because of a lack of confidence in the environment provided in our schools. Our school population is growing, our buildings are outdated, and our taxes are already high. We must work hard to find answers to these solutions. But this cannot come at the expense of the fantastic education for every student and child in the district. If I'm elected to the board, I will work tirelessly to apply my experiences as an educator and a communicator to help steer our students and schools in the right direction.
Thank you. And now we have Peggy.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you to the League and to the President's Council and to all of you for coming out. It is my pleasure to be running for the South Orange Maplewood Board of Education, joining Wayne Eastman and Manu Pai, who are running for re-election as current board members. My husband Steve and I live in South Orange with our 2 children, a 10th grader at Columbia High School and a 3rd grader at South Mountain Elementary. We've lived here for 10 years. By profession, I'm a lifelong educator. I began my career as a teacher with the Los Angeles Public Schools. And since 2003, I have served on the education faculty at Montclair State University, where I prepare early childhood and elementary teachers in language arts literacy instruction. I'm running for the board because I want to help ensure that all of our students are receiving a truly top quality education. Wayne, Manu, and I are excited about the potentially transformative access and equity policy that will bring our students more choice-based academic programs and increase access to higher level courses. To help the district bring this vision to reality, I'm prepared to provide stronger board oversight to ensure that our curriculum from K through 12 has rigor and support for a broad range of needs, interests, and talents. I will encourage collaboration with and among our highly skilled teachers as we seek their guidance and continued commitment to improving instruction. And I will work tirelessly to strengthen communication so that students and families feel heard and supported, get the needed services to which they are entitled, and can make informed choices. Thank you.
Thank you. And last we have Chanel Roberts.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Chanel Roberts. I'm running on the ticket of Team Soma. I'm the proud parent of an 11th grader at Columbia High School, and I'm a Hilton resident in Maplewood. Socrates once said that the secret of change is to focus all your energy not on fighting the old, but on building the new. Community organizing is in my DNA, and as far back as I can remember, I was always the one who kept people informed on the various issues that affected them and encouraged involvement. When it comes to our youth, it takes a village, and experience is the best teacher. Communication, common sense, and courage is what I bring to the South Orange Maplewood Board of Education. Like my shero, Margaret Collins, who died this year, her disappointment with the low levels of learning she felt students were experiencing led her to pioneer teaching methods that are still used today. Her students came from racially imbalanced schools and were deemed troubled, learning disabled, and socioeconomically disadvantaged, labels that have stigmatized students from my neighborhood. We need to make the necessary changes in our education system that contradict our town's diversity. Like Marga, I have a passion for student success, but for students to succeed, parents must feel empowered that they have a voice in the process, and educators must be equipped with the necessary tools in a timely manner to govern their job effectively. Thank you.
Thank you. Now we move on to the 3 prepared questions that were done by both league members and the President's Council. Because the first person to speak to answer these questions gets 1.5 minutes and everyone else gets 1, we did another lottery. So there were 3 people got either number 1 or number 2 or number 3. So in the answering to these questions, those people will answer first, and then everyone else will have a chance to respond. So the first question I will read, and then I'll say who gets to answer first. The district's elementary schools are overcrowded, as well as racially and socially economically unbalanced. How would you propose to solve these problems? And the person who drew the first response was Marion.
Thank you. Look, I'm not going to lie to anybody. There are no easy ways to solve these problems. This is... Can you start the timer again? Thank you. Look, I'm not going to lie to anybody. There are no easy ways to solve these problems. This is probably going to be one of the most divisive issues the new Board of Ed will have to tackle. First and foremost, the district needs to hire better demographers. Our demographers have been incorrect in their student enrollment predictions since my oldest son started at Tuscan in 2008. Being a Tuscan parent, I know a little something about overcrowding. Tuscan Elementary School's current enrollment is approximately a little over 620 students in a school built in the early 1920s designed for, I believe, no more than 350 or 400. A few years ago, I personally witnessed an incredibly divisive attempt to rezone a small number of Tuscan families to Clinton. That was essentially a failure. My children's school is so overcrowded that we have 2 portables that are being used for 4 classrooms that are currently 30 years past their lifespans. Make no mistake, these difficult choices are going to have to be made, and we must have strong community and stakeholder input. Our demographics are changing. I can see the changes already in my own Maplewood neighborhood and elementary school. There is no way around that, but that doesn't mean we can't have a more diversified elementary school system. We have to include all the stakeholders, we have to listen to parents, we have to hold community forums. I've spoken to many Seth Boyden parents in the last few months and know they're very concerned about the future of their school. I think there are some very strong arguments to be made to turning Seth Boyden into a magnet school for the arts, or STEM, or even both. Thank you.
Thank you. Now everyone else will have a minute if they wish to respond, and what we're going to do is simply just go down the road and start all over again. So Chanel, if you would like to respond to this question.
Thank you, and thank you, Marion. Seth Boyden was my daughter's zone school, and it didn't take me long to recognize that the classrooms were separated and unequal. There were instances where classes were full of just black boys, and I wondered what was wrong, especially since the parent community reflected something different. I questioned the overcrowding of classes and the lack of teacher support, and was only talked down to or marginalized by the administration because of my local address. Our family didn't move to this district or neighborhood to be treated like this. It was then that I began to question the administration about their tactics and expose the contradictions. Regrettably, I had blamed some of the teachers, but I now know that they were a product of the environment and watched often as their peers were retaliated against for speaking out. In an age of information, ignorance is a choice. This has gone on for too long and will require the input from not only the board, but include the community so that this is not an issue that gets just a Band-Aid, but a substantial resolution. Therefore, I do hope Dr. Ramos will cover this topic at the Education Summit, and we will work on this together.
Thank you. Chris?
This is not an easy question. This is not going to be solved in 60 seconds. Our district has a long history with these challenges. We need to look at long-term solutions that are going to take into account the new normal of this high enrollment. And we need to ensure that all students get the same high-quality education. And this is not going to happen overnight. But we can do something now. We could refurbish, we could buy new portables if needed. We can increase support at the elementary levels, and we can consider adding additional teachers to staff the aid in dealing with these larger classes. As an additional example, we can help by reinvigorating the demonstration school at Seth Boyden by giving them and their families a better reason to opt in.
Thank you. Wayne, would you like to answer this question?
Yes, certainly. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Peggy. I'm going to focus in the brief time on Seth Boyden, where my wife and I sent our two children, Jonathan and Caroline, and they are both proud graduates of Seth Boyden. We were both excited and inspired by the multiple intelligences model and by the pro-integrative purpose of the opt-in program at Seth Boyden. You know, now it's years later, there remains an importance of having a district that has balance in its schools, racially and socioeconomically, and Boyden is still very much a focus. What I would say is, as one who's deeply committed to that particular school, along with all our other schools, we've got to listen to people. And in particular, we've got to draw in people who live in the Boyden neighborhood. It always, yes, did concern me back years and years ago that the opt-in program essentially offered a choice for others elsewhere in the district, not for the parents at Boyden itself. The policy is written partly to change that. Let's change it with Dr. Ramos and all the rest of us together. Thank you.
Thank you. Peggy Friesen, would you like to respond?
Thank you. I'm also going to focus on the second part of this question. Since the demographic imbalances in our district are primarily related to the high proportion of students of color and economically disadvantaged students at Seth Boyden Elementary, and to a lesser degree at Clinton. I'm committed to ensuring that our schools are more demographically balanced, and I'm open to looking at redistricting as a possible solution. But I think a better way may lie in working within the framework of the new access and choice policy. First off, to support the work of the Seth Boyden community to identify a new direction for Boyden as a demonstration magnet. I've heard so many interesting solutions proposed out there: an arts magnet, a possible bilingual immersion magnet, a core knowledge curriculum magnet, to name a few. Regardless of the option chosen, I believe it's essential and fundamentally fair, as Wayne said, that if families from around the district have a choice to opt in to Boyden, that Boyden families also have a choice to go elsewhere. I also want to be clear that I'm open to many possible solutions, but to ensure that the parent communities impacted by these decisions are in the driver's seat.
Thank you. Dorcas.
The new board that comes to be after the election must work to help guide the administration develop a clear plan on how the district will manage 20% increases over the past 10 years in elementary school enrollment, which serves as the development pipeline for our two middle schools and Columbia High School. There are several short and long-term approaches to manage overcrowding at this level. First, we need to assess the logistics and budgetary considerations for adding, adjusting modular portable classrooms to schools where crowding currently exists. Second, we also need to consider policy amendments that alter maximum class size while addressing the need for additional teacher presence and supplemental support in these classes, allowing for the right mix of instruction and reinforcement for the increased number of children. That has to happen now, not waiting for planning and planning and planning. For the long term, we need to identify a clear path forward for Seth Boyden and any plans for redistricting. We know the enrollment for one demonstration school in our district has been falling over the past few years, and we're leaving open seats for other young, diverse children in other areas of the district. We need to change that.
Thank you. Anne-Marie?
Our former superintendent took his eye off the ball on overcrowding across all the schools, on keeping Seth Boyden working well as a demonstration school to attract opt-ins, on making sure that our aging portables don't have pipes that freeze in the winter. Where was the board? I do expect more. I expect an effective board has to have strong oversight of its superintendent. We We need long-term planning that takes account of the worst-case scenario of continued growing enrollment that is educationally sound, makes access and equity more than just a paper policy by addressing the need for socioeconomic integration across our schools. And we need buy-in from the community and from the teaching staff. As Chris Saban mentioned, right now, let's fix the portables we have, improve our staffing ratios of elementary support personnel in all our schools, and let's make sure we have good community participation in the Education Summit to creatively discuss Seth Boyden and other crowding concerns. That may mean shifting a few resources. That is what the equity and the proposed policy means in practice.
Thank you. Elizabeth?
Thank you. Hi, we can't let this continue. For far too long, this has been continuing. It is very important that it is such an important issue that we cannot do this alone as a Board of Ed. We must get buy-in from all the stakeholders. Without their input, it is doomed to failure. And we have seen that way too often. There are a few ways that we can go with this, and I am not an expert, nor do I claim to be, on how we fix the problem. One that I have heard, after speaking with Tony Mazzocchi, who was the former music supervisor, was he worked on a plan for a magnet school for Montrose, and he wanted to make it an arts magnet school. He had gotten the buy-in of MJ Pat and other people, and he really had a great plan. We should not reinvent the wheel. We should go back to him and look at this plan. I'm a former STEM supervisor. Another thing that has been floated around is the idea of a STEM school. I personally would love to use my knowledge and expertise to work on something like that.
Thank you.
So, thank you.
Thank you, Madhu.
Yes, it's true. Our elementary school population has increased 20% annually for the last few years, leading to some very large class sizes. It would be unwise at this juncture to pursue redistricting or new construction in the short term, as the district's demographer who predicted this population bubble has said that it will shrink in the next 5 years. We do have to, however, monitor the young influx of young children moving into the district, driven primarily by housing turnover from fleeing empty nesters. The district needs to do its part to maintain a tax cap that won't lead to increases that drive people out. My slate is the one most committed to addressing taxpayer sensitivity. The revitalization of Seth Boyden could help solve some of our problems by giving parents across the district an enticing alternative to their zoned school, and by giving the parents zoned for Seth Boyden the option of their own opt-in. They currently are the only ones that have no choice in the district. I think an arts magnet school would be great. I think STEM would be great, but I look forward to hearing feedback from the Education Summit from the community to inform the future of Seth Boyden.
Thank you. Okay, thank you. That's the first question. Now we go to the second question. Which specific areas of the district budget would you reduce? In which areas would you expand allocation? And what other creative solutions would you recommend to identify new sources of funding or more efficient use of what we have? And the person who will speak first based on the lottery is Madhu.
Okay. Well, given that I just wrote an op-ed piece on the responsibilities of a board member, I do feel compelled to clarify that the board does not create or redline items on the budget. Getting in the way of the administration's work would be the worst offense of our policy governance role. The board is responsible for setting the operating budget tax cap and overseeing the budget development process. This is where I'll focus. The solution to our $20 million deficit does not lie solely in cutting programs or increasing taxes. We will just further decimate the arts and our elementary schools and drive out the diversity we are so proud of. The board needs a majority that will ensure the budget process has more rigor and accountability. I think Dr. Ramos would welcome that. We need to start with focused goals, not a laundry list. Under the leadership of Wayne and myself, the board dramatically streamlined our district goals to make way for a strategic plan to help align priorities. We need to expect a budget with revenue growth levers, not just cuts. We need more solutions like Montrose. We shouldn't be accepting a budget that's simply last year's budget plus additional costs. Administration should be scrutinizing and questioning every line item on the budget, as if it's creating it from scratch each year. And lastly, thank you, Jeff Bennett, for constantly reminding us that we must aggressively pursue a larger portion of the state aid that we are owed. I agree. Pushing for reform in Trenton is among the most important work that a Board of Ed member can do.
Thank you. And now we'll go around the circle again. Marion?
Okay, thank you. We as a community must come together and decide what our educational priorities are. As Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. once said, a budget is a moral document. In the last few years, I have been dismayed to see the Board of Ed cut so many essential and important programs from our district, including the outsourcing of all our special ed paraprofessionals in a penny-wise, pound-foolish decision. I've recently been reading a book called The Prize by Dale Rusikoff. It's about how Facebook founder Mark Zuckerberg gave essentially $200 million to Newark. And it's true. You cannot save a district by plowing money into it. You cannot expect that throwing money, in Newark's case, hundreds of millions of dollars, will magically fix a broken system. We need to be more coordinated and effective in how we spend our dollars. We must allocate our limited funds very carefully and make tough decisions about where we want to spend and where we can find savings that impact the least number of students. Thank you.
Thank you. Chanel?
Thank you, Marion. Yes, we do need to be fiscally responsible and accountable. This is why I question why the state came and took millions of dollars back from us. Let's talk about security, for example. How much protection are we willing to spend? How much are your children worth? We had at our education summit a week ago a student who discussed how she suffers from mental health issues. She has anxiety attacks and she's depressed. But we're not equipped to, we need the training for our teachers and our educators in our schools so that the facilitators can provide what our children need. We didn't have social media the way our kids do now, and our children are being bullied from every side. We have almost 800 students in the middle school with just 2 counselors. We need to rethink how we're spending our budget, and allocate the dollars appropriately so that we save our children.
Thank you. Chris?
Before we cut, we need to look at our efficiencies. Healthcare, transportation, energy. These are 3 line items that add up to roughly 20% of our budget. And particularly energy, we are a green community. We need to not pretend, but act like a green community. We need to increase the investment in early education, which will then, in the long term, save us money. We need to make sure that all kids are reading on grade level by 3rd grade. And we need to improve special education services so that we can serve more kids in district. As far as sources of funding, we need to tap the expertise within our district to make sure that we are securing the grants that can help us address this. We need to address the state funding model in a way that we can work with like-minded communities and parents to force the state to fully fund the state formula. And we also need to be smarter about the local development and reduce the use of tax havens.
Thank you. And now Wayne.
Thanks, Diane. In regard to the budget, let's be very clear that the fundamental role of the Board of Education involves determining the overall tax levy, the impact on taxpayers. We are the only part of the system that is accountable not only to educational needs, important, and also to, yes, taxpayer stress, also important. It is a big mistake, and one that we've worked hard on the board over the years to focus on micromanagement of this item versus that item. We need to be vigilant, and we have been. There used to be increases 4%, 5%, 6% a year back at the time that a campaign manager for one of the other slates was on the board for 9 years. We brought that down. We're committed to rigor. We're committed to continued rigor, and that's the important decision, and to respect for professional decisions that are made within understanding that we have a role as well.
Thank you. Peggy?
Thank you. I want to reiterate Madhu and Wayne's point, first off, that board members do not have line-by-line budget review. We work with administration to establish district goals, and the fundamental responsibility is to determine the overall tax levy increase. With our commitment to the 2% cap on increase, Madhu, Wayne, and I are the candidates that will bring real taxpayer sensitivity to the board. That said, I think for too long, the board has been presented with this very question at the end of budget season: what areas are you willing to cut and what do you want to maintain? I don't believe this is how the budget process should be handled. Instead, every area of the budget should be analyzed for potential savings or for changes to the way things are done for possible efficiencies. For example, I train teachers in ways to strengthen curriculum and teaching that are most likely to impact student learning, and in particular, practices that support students who are struggling. As a board member, I would approach the budget process with this lens. I would press administration to utilize these best practices and innovative curriculum approaches to improve learning outcomes that are cost neutral.
Thank you. Dorcas?
We must have full transparency and understanding of district costs and how they add value to overall learning in the district. I've had several conversations with parents and families across the district, even those with fairly sophisticated senses of finance and comprehensive understanding of the budgetary process. And often we are at a loss for how to make sense of district budgetary processes. We need to create a community, user-friendly document that provides meaningful information in real time. We need to challenge the administration to consider how are we spending on consultants, spending on communication band-aids versus master communication plans, spending on multiple, sometimes overlapping professional development costs, and how about dual certification of teachers to save and consolidate our training and curriculum implementation. Finally, identifying public and private partnerships with industry where corporate social responsibility programs look to support STEM and the arts through sustained programming are available and people are looking to partner. We need to do that and stay within the 2% cap.
Thank you, Anne Marie.
Wayne, I am my own person and I know budgets. I have an MBA and I've managed big budgets while at JP Morgan Chase. I also own a preschool in town, which requires me not only to budget, but to align my limited resources to the goals and to justify every single expense. I understand that our schools are essential to the long-term vitality of our towns. Holding the line on taxes, which I believe is stated by law, 2% state tax cap in 2011 and 2012. Holding this line is more than just setting a target and then accepting with little question the administration's budget proposal in March and April. This hand-wringing has got to stop. The board asked for questions, asked for analyses last year, and it was most disappointing that these analyses were not addressed.
Thank you. Alyssa.
Hi, yes. I think it needs to be remembered that Wayne and Manu and the board did not bring down our goals to 2%. That was the state that did that. A state law was passed in 2011 that made it so that we had to have a 2% tax levy cap. We need to bring full transparency to this board and to the budget process. We need to bring in an outside auditor who will look at things. Look, Maplewood just was able to find $2 million when they did that. Hopefully, maybe our outside auditor can find the same. We have to find ways to work with the two towns to find savings in healthcare, in other fixed costs that we have now. And we must look at ways to work with SOPAC and Seton Hall and other organizations to do that. We also must become the state leader in we must become the state leader in looking for ways to restore the budget and to change the budget formula.
Thank you. Okay, now we move on to question 3. The new access and equity policy promises that all students shall be provided with age-appropriate academic supports for access to advanced level courses. Do you think this can be achieved, and if so, how? What trade-offs would you support in order to achieve this goal in terms of funding, programs, and services? And the first person to answer this, she'll get a minute and a half, is Anne Marie.
We have a historic problem with too few students in upper level and AP courses, with there being a clear racial pattern in the numbers, but also too few girls in math and science, and too few students with disabilities achieving at high levels. There are at least two causes to this. Some students enter our district with skill deficits, and our intervention efforts are not effective or aggressive enough to make sure they achieve grade level quickly. And many of our students start out on a grade level playing field in kindergarten, but become discouraged and lose confidence in their own abilities because we don't do a good enough job with all students at building relationships and keeping them engaged. None of that will change as a result of the equity and access policy by itself. So the district needs to do what it should have been doing all along. If the board were serious about all the annual goals, legal mandates, and other policy that have already been on the books for years. Chris and I intend to ensure that the district does what needs to get done to provide the best that this policy can offer for all our students. We will not let this policy be a paper policy, and we will actively ask questions and monitor the implementation to make sure all stakeholders are in agreement on the how. We will not only expect more, we will deliver more.
Thank you. So now we'll move on to Alyssa. And now each have a minute.
Okay, thank you. Team SOMA 2015 is very happy to see that the district approved the new access and equity policy. It's something that the parents have been asking for a long time. But it's important to understand the context of this new policy being put in place. This was put in place because the district did not comply with their own policies that they had put in place previously. The Office of Civil Rights and the ACLU had to come in and make this happen. A new policy means nothing, no matter how well-intentioned, if it is not implemented and enforced. Team SOMA 2015 will work hard to make sure that it is properly implemented and that it has the resources that it needs to make it, all aspects of it, a reality. We must get to a point where children can have access to every level course and that there is no more levels.
Thank you, Madhu.
I strongly believe that our teachers, who will be on the ground doing the hard work that this policy requires, should have a large part in defining the how of this policy. Top-down mandates from the board or administration will not work. That said, I do believe the idea of proper academic supports can be implemented with limited trade-offs. By employing a mind shift that the objective of our curriculum, our systems, and our teachers is to prepare every kindergartner through 9th grader for the rigor of AP classes in high school. While many certainly hope for this, it is not the universal mindset with which we approach our elementary and middle schools today. A reevaluation of our curriculum is also needed. We are heavy on skills and light on content, especially in K through 5. AP classes require a balance of both. Kids shouldn't just be writing about their feelings on a particular subject. They should know enough information to write about that subject. And I'm not suggesting we give up important things like learning through play in the early years and hinder a love of learning. However, interesting content is critical to engaging our students, especially our boys, to help them become intellectually curious learners.
Thank you. Marion?
I hope with all my heart that the new access and equity policy can be achieved. I fear that the devil will be in the details. While I wholeheartedly support providing all our students with age-appropriate academic supports for access to advanced level courses, my concern is how we will be able to effectively implement this policy. This policy's language is very vague, and I always get concerned when I see the word rigor used in the same sentence as kindergarten. What what trade-offs would I support in order to achieve this goal in terms of funding programs and services? In a perfect world, we wouldn't have to make any trade-offs, but obviously this isn't a perfect world. But apparently it is a world where we can easily find $19,000 to pay for 6 months of a Let's Talk new software program our new superintendent is hoping to launch out of its pilot, and start paying, from what I've researched in other districts, $40,000 to $50,000 a year to fully implement on an annual basis. Again, Team Soma and I would start our terms on the board by working to bring an independent budget auditor in to go over our budget line by line, line by line. We have to be more transparent. Thank you.
Thank you. Chanel?
Thank you, Mary, and that's so correct. Let me start by saying that there are no trade-offs when it comes to our children. This is why our schools are in the crisis. This new access and equity policy is just a contract for choice 2.0. Yes, it is a vague idea, very similar, and it is going to be the devil in the details. That's why it's going to take the participation of all of us at this education summit to participate, to provide input. Then it's going to take the follow-through. We need to be part and sit at that table for strategic planning to make sure that we craft the policy so that it's effective and that it's substantial and so that all of our children can move ahead. I'd also like to see a needs assessment, that each student will be provided with an academic plan that will outline a curriculum based on their needs. We need to stop paying millions of dollars for tests that don't provide what our students have learned and what they need to learn. If we assess the students and prepare them in the lower grades, we can afford higher level classes with the support of all students because more children will be participating at the higher level. Thank you.
Thank you. Chris?
Yes, we can have a public school district where everyone succeeds. Now, I support the new policy, but by itself it will change nothing. We've had lots of policies on the books. What we need is a concrete follow-through and an effective board management to enforce this. We need to do things a little differently. We need to break the cycle where some teachers and some parents underestimate and give up on students, and students then in turn give up on themselves. We're talking about children of color, children with special needs, girls in math and science, and forgotten middle. To ensure that all students have foundational skills to take advantage of all opportunities, we need to, for starters, make sure that every child is reading at grade level by 3rd grade. And the board could have fixed the math placement problem years ago. We now see that that has been a major issue. And my running mate, Anne Marie, has been raising this issue on math placement for the past 6 years.
Thank you. Wayne?
Thanks. I'm excited about what lies ahead of us, and yes, it's genuinely new, it's innovative. As I said, Manu and I ran on this, and yes, there is a whole lot ahead. Teacher buy-in is critical. And I just want to suggest that, in a sense, the issue of preparing people for AP courses and higher level work, it goes back to the elementary years and to the options, supported options, that really should be available there. Teachers, staff, all of us working together can be saying, hey, is a given approach, Calkins reading, writing workshop, say, great as it may be for many of our children, is it getting the job done in terms of phonemic awareness, in terms of certain skills, in terms of content? What are the options that we can be introducing that parents can buy into, be informed about, work on, and then are going to, starting from the earliest grades, move us forward so children will all be prepared to succeed. I look forward to hearing from Ms. Friedson more about this.
Thank you. Peggy?
Thank you. I think that the best and most cost-effective way to provide age-appropriate academic supports for access is indeed by doing better to build the foundation for student success during the early years. This starts with ensuring that in every elementary and middle school classroom, we have in place a rich and challenging curriculum that is truly aligned with the rigorous state standards we now have. We must ensure that our instruction and classroom learning environments are designed around best practices and are supporting the learning of every child. The best way to achieve this, in my experience, is to engage our teachers in partnership and collaboration around the goals of access and equity, drawing on the teaching expertise and knowledge of students we have right here in our district. I would encourage a particular focus on our reading and writing curriculum that will determine to a great degree student success across all subject areas and beyond. We must also build on initiatives already in place, the Montrose Learning Center that will soon open, and our kindergarten through grade 3 reading intervention that is producing very impressive results in helping struggling readers reach grade level.
Thank you. Dorcas?
The new policy is a symbolic and powerful indication that we are serious about reducing the achievement gap and affording all of our children the educational pathways they deserve. We need to be clear that while this policy has the backing of Dr. Ramos and the board, our district has a similar policy of choice already in place, and we have not been following it. But the real challenge is implementation. All of us have been talking about that. What will these supports and alignments look like? How will we support our teachers in ways that are meaningful to them so that they can support our students? Who will be accountable for ensuring key changes are taking place? My strong belief is that we must, as a community, confront head-on the systemic and community-wide issues around unconscious bias that leads teachers, administrators, and everyone in between to make assumptions, decisions, and evaluations of our children based on a set of beliefs and attitudes that are not aligned with respect and dignity for all people. Only then can we pay attention to this fundamental issue will we progress to fulfill the access and equity policy.
Thank you. Okay, now we move to the portion of the evening where we ask the candidates your questions. So I'm assuming league members have been collecting questions. I hope, I didn't mention this earlier, I hope the questions deal with the issues and not personal stuff. And I would hope that the candidates would answer to the issues. So we have some questions. Oh, okay. Okay. Given the number of candidates, and we do want to hear from all of them, we are apologizing to the audience. They received, evidently, the league received quite a few questions. We cannot ask all of them, so I'm sure that they have been trying to consolidate them so that these questions hopefully reflect the majority of your opinions or issues or questions that you have out there. So now what we're going to do is simply start from the left and go all the way down the table. So Wayne will answer first for the first question, and then Peggy will answer first for the second question, and we'll just keep going back and forth. These are all 1-minute answers. First question, and it's directed to everybody. How will you propose that the district better ensure that promised and legally required services are being effectively delivered to students with IEPs and 504? Is that what it is? SO4? 504, that's what I thought. 504 plans. Want me to read that again? I stumbled on the last piece. How will you propose that the district better ensure that promised and legally required services are being effectively delivered to students with IEPs and 504 plans? So,
okay, good. Thanks, Diane. I think this is one area among many where our streamlining of district goals and our move toward a strategic plan, action plan model is going to be helpful. Special education is one of our major items, about 25% of our overall spend, a little bit less. And ideally, what it connects to is the entire function being related to a portion of our strategic plan, and then being the subject of an action plan developed by administration, approved by the board, in which there is accountability. This area is that important, and as much as our district goals have been a traditional strength in many, many areas, one of the positives of what we're moving to right now is the ability to address this through our board governance, through our superintendent.
Okay, thank you. Peggy.
Oh, sorry. I might have misunderstood the format.
That's okay. That's okay. You can get to answer and we'll start the clock again. Do you want me to read the question again?
Yes.
Okay. How will you propose that the district better ensure that promised and legally required services are being effectively delivered to students with IEPs and 504 plans?
I think Wayne made an important point about the establishing streamlined goals and ensuring that our leadership presents us a plan that makes this a top priority. At the same time, I think that one of the great frustrations that I've certainly heard from parents in my outreach to the community during this campaign and in all of my years having children in the schools is the frustration over communications that so many have felt in trying to just get promised services. So I think that really continuing to work to strengthen the communications system, the willingness and availability of all members of our administration, and access to the board and the formats for conversation ongoing between board members and community members can just help to strengthen our capacity as a community to deliver those services as needed.
Thank you. Dorcas?
During my grassroots, on-the-ground investigation and heart-to-heart conversations with many members of our community, it's been very disheartening for me to learn that accountability is truly inconsistent, and that most of the families that I have spoken with have had to result in litigious action in order to get what is due to them based on the law. It's extremely important that we eliminate the black hole where fundamental questions about logistics, access, and supports continue unanswered, and we need to make sure that we follow a process that has accountability for responsiveness, accountability for basic checklists of making sure that everyone who has an IEP and a 504 is getting what they require. It should not take us hiring lawyers to make sure that our district responds to our children in need.
Thank you. Anne-Marie?
This should already be a priority for our district. We are one of 36 districts in New Jersey that are subject to a court finding in March of 2014 that requires state assessment, intervention, and monitoring to improve efforts to see that all our children are educated in the least restrictive environment. There's no such evidence that our district is addressing these concerns, and if elected, Chris and I will fight to make this a top district priority. We need to put an end to the frustrating roadblocks too often encountered by parents of classified children and those with 504 plans when they try to ensure that promised services are actually provided. We need to ensure that the district's provision of inclusive class settings for special needs students complies with the law and is consistent with educational best practices. We need to ensure that the academic interventions efforts from K through 12 are timely and aggressive, with staffing always matched to the actual need.
Thank you. Alyssa?
District goals will not solve this problem. Following the law will. We do not have a very good track record of following the law. I am a parent of a child with a 504 and did have special services in the past. This year, I had to fight to get my child what he needed. I am still waiting on clarification as to how he is going to get the extra help he's going to need because of the WIN schedule and the new schedule they put in the middle school. We have many parents who are facing these issues and are not getting answers. It's really simple. Follow the law. If you follow the law, we will not be in the situations that we are in.
Madhu?
The best way for the board to ensure anything is to hold administration accountable. Dr. Ramos and Ms. Riddell are both new, fresh faces, and I hope thinking, who will change the course of how special education is delivered in this district. Dr. Ramos shares my vision of moving this district to a much more client service model, fixing the operational issues that we have around communication, around gates, around defensiveness, and I believe that with proper guidance, we will get there. I mean, it's critically important to service the needs of our most vulnerable students. And I believe Dr. Ramos shares my vision and the vision of Wayne and Peggy that we need to make that happen.
Thank you, Marion.
Thank you. I'm a little disturbed to keep hearing the word vision. We have to follow the law, and the law is very simple. I'm a non-practicing attorney, and I was fortunate enough to take a special education law seminar with one of the leaders in special education law in the United States before I graduated from law school. Here's the law. It's called the Individuals with Disabilities in Education Act. It was passed in 1975 by Congress, and it guarantees every child in the United States a free and appropriate education in the least restrictive environment. There's also another law called the Rehabilitation Act. Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act also protects students with disabilities. We have to follow these laws. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. I also have a child who has a Section 4 and an IEP, and I am a non-practicing attorney and a financial journalist, as you can probably see, pretty willing to fight for things, and you would not believe the problem I had getting my son's speech therapy in kindergarten when his kindergarten teacher told me she couldn't understand half of what he was saying. They still wouldn't give my child speech therapy until I stepped in and mentioned, by the way, there's a law called IDEA. You need to follow it.
Thank you. Chanel?
Fight, fight, and more fight. That's all I've heard on this campaign trail. That's all I hear from district to district. And that's all I heard my mother talk about when my brother was growing up, because he was a child with special needs. He's passed on and he suffered from mitochondrial disease. But my mom, I remember watching how disheartened she would be, because at that time, she didn't know what the support services were. And that law had not been passed yet. So we need to stop complicating common sense, and we need to stop complicating what the law states. It's in place, it's there to protect our students, it's for us to utilize. We just need to move forward, and we need to provide our kids with the support systems that they need. We need to have them in place so that they can contribute and be effective students in our school systems.
Thank you. Chris?
The board needs to make sure that it is working as a board, making sure that the board is directing the superintendent, directing the administration. Our job as board members would be to give them or follow through with them. As this is not, we have policies, we have ways that we understand that children should be, is a child-centered approach. We should need to make sure that we are making things as comfortable and secure for the families. However, we as a board need to make sure that the administration is working for us and following through in a timely manner and making sure that we're working on this on a regular basis instead of doing it at an ad hoc situation.
Thank you. The next question is actually addressed to Mr. Eastman. So even though you answered first, you get to go again first. But it's addressed to you as board president and a multi-term serving board member. Mr. East, by the way, everyone else will get to respond to a sub-question on this one. Mr. Eastman, I'd like you to address the lack of communication between the board and the community. The tone of the meetings are hostile and leave parents frustrated and at a loss.
What I say is, thank you for the concern. I've worked hard as president to instill a positive, calm, and respectful tone from my position. We have, in our district, a very powerful culture of free speech in public speaks. It's not quite the same in our town governance and in other contexts. I believe we deeply need to respect that, while at the same time not getting drawn in. And I believe that this year, first year of my leadership as president of the board, we've come together. We've selected a new superintendent together, unanimously. Positive atmosphere, new teacher contract at reasonable terms, none of the lengthy negotiations and shirts in the schools. And then, critically, just recently, unanimously, we're together on the access and equity policy. Much as we led it, we're together.
Thank you. And the sub-question is basically, please address how you would improve the tone of our community discussions. So we'll start with Peggy and move down the line.
Well, I certainly think that board members in a leadership role are critical to establishing that tone. So I've been actually most pleased and impressed by the tone that I've seen struck by Mr. Eastman in the board meetings that have been held since January, since Wayne became president. I believe that there absolutely is an openness and availability to hearing diverse perspectives from the community. I would like to see the board consider new formats for allowing various stakeholder groups within the community, teachers, parents, students, administrators, to come together with board members to discuss core issues of import, perhaps outside of the traditional structures that now exist within board.
Thank you. Dorcas?
I think it's positive that the tone has changed. I think that the fact that there is consensus and a unanimous decision on the new superintendent is a good first step. Tone is certainly important, civility and consensus is certainly important, but there is an element of hearing and listening that is essential that many of us in the community do not feel currently exists. There's a stoic experience that we feel when we participate in public speaks, and we get a very polite thank you for sharing your opinion, and that's the end of it. And there's no real clear information about who will follow up, in what format will they follow up, and how will the hearing and listening stoically result in a response that is meaningful to the community question. I think that parents leave those experiences feeling listened to, but not necessarily heard or valued, and I would like to change that.
Thank you. Anne Marie?
Yes, tone is important, and I think the way you set the right tone is when you collaborate well with others. I practice active listening, and I question and I probe to make sure I understand someone else's point of view. Using this approach, I have a track record of really getting things done as a banker, a preschool director, and a community volunteer. I work hard at what I care about. I've been to most school board meetings for the last 5 years. I've read every public document the district has produced, filed numerous OPRA requests for what are by law public documents that the district is not voluntarily made available. I also understand that articulating vision is not enough. We need to make the school district work. I understand a lot about culture change and changing a large organization from within. I also know how to harness our parent organizations from my time as the HSA co-president. Sorry.
Thank you. Alyssa?
We need to look at what South Orange does. South Orange, at the end of every board meeting, they sit around and Sheena Collins sits there and she listens to everybody, what they have to say, and at the end of the meeting, she goes and addresses all the issues brought up. So people feel like they have been listened to and heard, and they get a response. Even if the response is, I'm sorry, I have to get back to you for more information. So many times I have come up in front of the board and heard nothing. Teachers do not come up to the board because they feel retaliated against. When I spoke as a teacher at the board, I was retaliated against. We cannot have this. We have to make it so that people feel free and open to speak and can speak their mind. We cannot continue the culture that we have right now.
Thank you. Madhu?
The best way that the board can ensure a more positive tone is to model that for the public, and I believe that, as Wayne said, our tone under his leadership and my leadership has changed. However, public speaks is not an opportunity for any sort of meaningful interaction with board members. It is a requirement of our board meetings, and sometimes when there are many public speaks, Board business agendas go late into the night and good decisions do not get made very late into the night. As a board member, I piloted board office hours. These were outside once-a-month meetings that actually would allow teachers, community members, students, anybody that wanted to have a meaningful interaction with the board to come and talk to the board. This way, there could be an actual dialogue, there could be meaningful back and forth versus the stoic response that people often complain about at board meetings. Unfortunately, it did not move forward. We had the same 3 people who showed up for 6 months, but I would welcome the opportunity to bring it back if you would all promise me that you would attend.
Thank you. Marion.
Okay, thank you. If elected to the Board of Education, Team SOMA 2015 will introduce a proposal to increase the number of board meetings we have to twice a month, like almost all of our surrounding districts. We cannot effectively govern this district when meetings frequently start 15:30. One meeting I was at started an hour late and then stretched into the next day. Our current board voted at almost 1 in the morning to remove the failed international baccalaureate program from the middle schools. Decisions of this importance should never be voted on that late. Having worked as a professional journalist for the last two decades, I bring extremely strong communication skills to this table. I would use these skills to help the district change its culture and history of poor communication with parents and the community. Doing a little research on this issue, I found out that, yes, public speaks is a required element in a board meeting, but guess what? There are some districts in New Jersey, such as the town of Verona, that actively engages in discussions with the community at their meetings. And so far, this hasn't resulted in anarchy. If enough board members want to, they can engage in meaningful dialogue with parents at school board meetings.
Thank you.
And that's what we would do.
Thank you. Chanel.
Thank you. Change has to come from the top down. And thank you, Mary, and this is why I'm so thankful to be running with you and Alyssa, because we share so many things alike. But what I want to bring to this is our students have a voice and they want to be heard. And I'd like to see more of them come to the forefront. We had a student summit about a week ago, and I was just amazed at the amount of input and solutions that they provided. And I said, you know what, we're creating a generation who's leading by example. They need to be brought to the board because then we can learn from them. As parents, we are frustrated. And I think a lot of that frustration even escalates because we come back to the board complaining about the same issues over and over. There needs to be more transparency. There needs to be more accountability. We need to return emails when people reach out to us, and we just need to change the way we effectively communicate.
Thank you. Chris?
Yes. Well, I've heard, I think the majority of the answers have been stated at least 4 or 5 multiple times. The one thing that I think at the board meetings that does not happen is just finding a way for everybody to work together and get along. I know that we can have a conversation, but find a way to have a conversation and not just want to stand out and be separated from somebody else. We have a district, and how our board represents itself is how our community represents itself and how our kids represent themselves. So we have to learn as a board or people who are on the board to fight for what is right, but find a way to do that in public that makes sense for everybody, that we can all appreciate each other.
Thank you. It seems like the questions are heavily to this side of the table, so I'm going to take some moderator privilege, and the next question we're going to break with the tradition, and we'll start with you, Chris, and work our way this way. Because it seems like you're always at the end. Sports gets kids excited about their schools and their town, even if they aren't on a team. How can we make sure that our best athletes and students aren't leaving the district? So we'll start with you this time, Chris.
Wow. Sports are the key to any district. And we're looking at creating a culture where everybody can understand, aside from just the arts, we know that sports are very important for everybody here. We need to make sure that we are reaching out not just in in high school, make sure that we're doing things and having our programs coordinated in middle school and as young as elementary school. I've worked, whether it's with football as well as in lacrosse and in basketball, and have seen the diversity. However, our district is not as, our communities do not blend together, and we need to make sure that where they are all working together to give our kids the chance to be able to be successful in sports.
Thank you. So let's reverse it this time. Chanel, would you like to go next?
Would you please repeat the question?
Sure.
I missed the ending.
Sure. How can we make sure that our best athletes and students aren't leaving the district in relation to sports?
In relation to sports. Well, one, I know there are 10 cases of bullying against some of the coaches in our sports arena. But I also think that sports is important. My daughter is a volleyball player. And one of the things we talked about before she entered, in entering Columbia High School was find something you like and become a part of it. And when she tried out for the team after working out in the hot sun, she didn't make the team, and she was devastated. And there were other girls who did the same thing and gave up. But instead of that, what she did was go back to the coach to find out why she didn't necessarily make the team, and then decided she'd like to be a manager instead. And at that, because she did that, he recognized her leadership. He allowed her to do it, and it just so turned out that someone else had to back out, and now she's been on the team since her freshman year. I think we need to take a look at and examine these programs. I think we also need to look at the other programs that exist. Find the talent that's within your own child and try to steer or direct them towards that activity.
Thank you. Marion?
And thank you, Chanel. I'm going to take a wild guess that the underlying issue behind this question is basically the fact that there have been a parade of angry parents coming in front of the board for the last 6 months talking about serious issues in regards to bullying and harassment on some Columbia High School sports teams. As an attorney, I can tell you that experiencing these parents and these athletes coming in front of the board, meeting after meeting, when scores of Columbia athletes and their parents was some of the most painful times I had sitting in front of these board meetings. It's clear we've been having serious issues in regard to bullying and harassment on some Columbia sports teams. As an attorney, I would use my legal knowledge to help prevent such incidents from occurring in the future. The Board of Ed should review the processes by which such complaints are filed and processed. And the board has stated that our in-house counsel has been working on a policy manual for all coaches in the district. This is a good first step to addressing these issues, but I fear that the problem may be more ingrained and entrenched than one new policy manual can address.
Thank you. Madhu?
So I have budding athletes myself, so I want to thank whoever asked this question. You know, recently we have had some negative things that have happened within our athletic department, and I think it's given the board and Dr. Ramos and administration an opportunity to fully evaluate athletics in this district. And I agree, it's a bit of an afterthought, you know, and we do need to put more focus toward it. My hope is that we can take something that stemmed from something negative, resolve it, and move into a positive direction where we can really evaluate our athletic department, what's happening there, and the role of athletics in terms of educating the whole child, because I do think it is a form of education and an important one at that.
Thank you. Alyssa?
Sports are very important. My son plays basketball. I actually wish they had middle school sports for our children. A lot of other districts do, and we don't. But we also need to treat those students fairly. And when you have 10 confirmed cases of HIV violations, we have an issue. We have a big issue. And we need to figure out how we are going to hold those people accountable and how we are going to retrain the staff and make it so that our students feel safe playing sports in our district. We cannot let this continue, and we need to figure out how we are going to fix these issues. Sports are so important to our students. They really get them involved and active, and we have to make it so that people feel like they want to play these sports.
Thank you. Anne-Marie.
Yes, sports are a key way to connect students to our schools, and part of that is the camaraderie developed as they're playing together and the development of friendships and pride in our towns. But the key is our coaches. Coaches can have a powerful impact on a child's development. The movie some of us watched last week, The Mask We Live In, had a very powerful coach that reminded us that coaches help students negotiate stress, disappointment, and frustration, as well as acknowledge their achievements. How a coach deals with or models stress, disappointment, and frustration is exactly how our students will learn how to do that. We must have coaches who view their student athletes in a manner that helps them develop these social emotional talents. And we also have to make sure that the imbalance of power is understood.
Thank you. Dorcas.
As many on the panel have said, I also agree that coaches serve as models for values and behaviors and can often be the gateway for many of our students to further education and increase participation in organized collegiate sports. Recent policies and attempts to address differences in coaching style have actually caused quite a bit of frustration and clouded the issues in terms of appropriate behaviors and legal behaviors as far as how our coaches are interacting with our students. I think that if we look at this as an opportunity, bridging back to how we look at our budget and how we look at how we engage community and engage our teachers, we can look to tri-state examples of pilots where there is co-certification with coaching as an opportunity to utilize our teachers in more engaged ways and also lend that connection from classroom to field so that there are better opportunities for sports engagement.
Thank you. Peggy?
Thank you. I can speak to this issue a bit as a longtime soccer parent and parent of a Columbia High School soccer player. Sports programs have absolutely been a source of frustration among parents and athletes alike in the district. As a board member, I would bring that lens in addition to a close focus on curriculum and teaching, the perspective of athletics to prioritize among our many goals in the district. I do think that it's essential that we look at and prioritize finding skilled and supportive coaches who, by virtue of both their knowledge of their sports and their commitment to the development of their players, both in their skills and their character, can build morale among our athletes. We also need to direct our superintendent to review and establish policies and expectations for athletic coaches and to hold everyone to those expectations.
Thank you. And Wayne?
On sports, I see a parallel with my employer, my day job at Rutgers. We got the same red and black of Columbia. You know, we've had a big culture change at Rutgers toward the Big Ten and big-time sports, football in particular. And you know, I had to think through it, and then I decided for all the bumps in the road, I think it's a great thing for my university. And if there's the will in our community to sort of get things going, to build on, let's say, Profeta Field, which was set up a few years ago, Lynn Profeta Field, you know, and it was a great public-private partnership. If we got more momentum along those lines, I think we can really do some cool things. I gotta be honest and say, yeah, our spend is a little low on sports relative to peer districts, but look, the budget is really tight. Is this a situation where the spigots of taxpayer money is gonna open up? I don't really think so. On the other hand, imaginative, committed public-private partnerships by citizens, you know, by Columbia, Scholarship Fund, and others, you know, we can do some cool things if there's the will.
Thank you. Okay, the next question, and you all know who you are. It says, for the non-incumbents, what is your record of attending board meetings? For the incumbents, what have you done or what will you do to improve the board meetings? And I think we'll start, I'll go back this way. Dorcas, I'll let you start.
So a couple of things. I mean, it's always easy for someone who is new to a group of individuals who have worked very hard to gain momentum to make assumptions about how things can be made better. But a few ideas I have in terms of management of time is an opportunity to really have pre-reads so that everyone comes in, there's no lingering. We really want to take kind of a Swiss approach in terms of timeliness so that we're not going into the wee hours of the night. I also feel that there's a real opportunity for that changing of the public speaks so that there really is that engagement and that active communication with the community. We are elected to represent the community and not just be an entity that makes decisions in and amongst themselves.
Thank you. Anne-Marie?
I'm sorry, I think I misunderstood the question.
Yeah.
Could you repeat that?
It says, for the non-incumbents, the question that this person wants you to answer is, what is your record of attending board meetings? For the incumbents, what have you done or what will you do to improve the board meetings?
Okay. So my record of attending board meetings is probably for the past 8 years. I might have missed a few for a variety of reasons. The reason I attended board meetings was you find out a lot of cool information, but that's not really the reason. The PTA used to assign us to go and attend the board meetings and report back, and we still do that through President's Council. So we are trying to get more people to attend. They are, as Dorcas outlined, they are a little difficult to follow if you don't have all the information available. For example, on Monday they were talking about the goals and there was not a handout that was not attached to the agenda. It was really hard to follow along with what was stated or what was being discussed because they didn't even state the goal that was being discussed. So that's my answer.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, I have been attending board meetings for a long time. I'd say I was in the district for 9 years, off and on throughout that 9 years, and I would also speak at the board meetings very often. You might remember me from numerous board meetings, including the IB board meetings where I spoke out against IB and other things. I have been a person who has watched and grown and understood them for a long time and been an advocate for what I thought was right, even at times when it would get me in trouble. I was reprimanded by administration for speaking out at board meetings, even though I was a parent and a teacher in the district. So it is something that I'm passionate about, that I continue to do, and when I am not speaking at them or at the board meeting, I am watching it on TV. I even watched one on a ride down to DC in my, on the train. That's how much I love watching board meetings. Or how pathetic I am, either one.
Thank you. Madhu?
Sorry, just so I'm clear, so the incumbents are asked how we would make
What
board
would,
meetings better?
yes, for the incumbents, what have you done or what will you do to improve the board meetings?
Okay, great. So this past Monday night, we were all out of there and home at 11 o'clock. I think the board meetings are actually getting better. They are well run under Wayne's leadership. We have an agenda that is less packed with lots of presentations and important votes. Now, every now and then we will have a lot of public speaks and that pushes everything on the agenda, but I think we're getting much better with trying to develop very tight agendas that don't pack in too many presentations and don't push votes until the very late wee hours of the night. In terms of what I could do to make the board meetings better, I mean, one thing I think we could do is just in our efforts to go green and not have a lot of printed materials, make sure that everybody knows about paperless board meetings. There is a public way to access all the materials that the board members see, and I think part of our communication goals should be to make sure that community members know exactly what we are seeing in the spirit of transparency.
Marion.
Thank you. My record of attending board meetings in the last year has been pretty good. If I haven't attended a meeting in person, I have definitely watched it on TV, much to the disappointment of my husband, who's probably wanted to watch something else and didn't like seeing the board meetings. But they're fascinating to me. They really are. And I have been there for at least the past 6 out of 7 in person. And yes, Monday's board meeting did end a little before 11, but I've got to tell you that's been an anomaly, excuse me. My team, Team Soma 2015, feels very strongly that we need to move to 2 board meetings a month, like almost every one of our surrounding districts, to effectively govern this district. Most of the meetings that I've attended have gone way after midnight, gone past 1:30 in the morning. That's what I have experienced, that's what I have seen in the past year, and that's why I feel very strongly that our board meetings should be moved to twice a month, and we should also have more public opportunity to comment. Thank you.
Thank you. Chanel?
I've attended quite a number of board meetings, but I'm also part of that parent community who likes to watch it televised. But in addition to that, we also have our tag team parent groups. We're in touch with one another on our instant chats, and sometimes we just organize ourselves in a way, because these meetings run so long and well into the night, to rotate who should be present at one of those meetings and then feed back the information. So it took a community of us to organize ourselves so that we can make sure that we get the materials. But then again, as Marion had clearly stated, Team Soma wants to propose moving to 2 meetings, because we should not be trying to govern meetings at 12 and 1 o'clock in the night, so that we can have more effective leadership and be able to move things forward and have more people come out and participate in person.
Thank you. Chris?
Yep. So I've been attending board meetings this year. The past few years I've attended not as often. However, beginning of this year in attending, that really got me excited and wanting to be a part of this community more as it relates to the board. As it was with math placement, there were a number of issues that were on the table. It was math placement, it was insurance, and there were coach issues. And all 3 of them affected me, and I didn't realize at the time, so I'm glad that I was there, and it got me to the point where having conversations with Anne Marie and other people that I can be a voice, not just for the people who I represent in my household, but to be able to speak to people and hear from people outside so that I can inform, because I am, which I didn't realize, that I have a following and people listen, and my point of view is one that is trusted and respected in the district.
Thank you. Mark. Wayne.
Thank you. And one thing, yep, I got lots of ideas in terms of our board, thanks. Ideas on board process. I want to start by saying it's got to be done in collaboration with my colleagues. You know, I'm very conscious of taking office with the support of 5 members for voting for another candidate. I really respect that. That's the way democracy works. You've got to work together with people. And I've energetically tried to do that and try to respect that, and I will continue to do that. In terms of progress moving forward, I really have a strong sense of optimism that with our new superintendent, we're in a state to sort of work on the relationship building with key stakeholders, such as our teachers, their representatives, SOMEA, other key stakeholders, in a way that I think can really help a lot with the vibe, the atmosphere that prevails at the meetings. I also very much want to second comments made by Madhu and also Peggy on the idea that opportunities to open up board processes, committees, meetings, to hear more people in more ways. We're going to do it. Let's do it.
Thank you. Peggy?
Thank you. So I, like other among the candidates, have been attending board meetings in person more this year than in previous years, but have been a longtime watcher of board meetings on television. I think in some ways the stance of having stepped back to a certain degree from real immersion in this board meeting process has afforded me the perspective of an outsider to some degree, which I think can be helpful in looking at ways that communication might not be optimal, at least for all stakeholder groups, or ways that we might open the process, as Wayne suggested, to other less formal interactions, perhaps outside of the context of the more formal monthly board meetings. I would look forward to engaging our teachers in those conversations, to hearing from parents, from students, to express their concerns and feel that they're being heard more actively than those more structured formats allowed. Thank you.
Okay, I think given our time, this is going to be the last question because then we need to go to closing statements. This question is directed to Wayne and Peggy and Madhu, but all of you will have a chance to respond after they go first. And I'm just going to reverse the order again and start with Madhu. And then we'll jump up to Peggy and to Wayne. Please give, here's the question, please give a specific example of the current board's success in addressing the achievement gap and overcrowding. Then please give a specific example of what you would do differently to address the above challenges. I think maybe you should address number 1 and number 2, everybody else should get it. But anyway, Madhu, let's start with you.
Okay, I will address number 1, I guess. So the question was around the achievement gap, and what have we done to address the achievement gap?
Yes. What do you your success? What you feel is a success in addressing the achievement gap and overcrowding?
And overcrowding. Okay.
They're both here. Sorry.
Okay. I will try to address one and maybe have time for the other. I actually believe that this new policy that we have been able to pass unanimously, bring the board together behind, is going to be extremely, extremely important and effective in addressing the achievement gap, because what it will do is it will assume that every child should have the opportunity to take rigorous coursework and build the foundational opportunities to do that through our curriculum, through how we train teachers and how they approach our students, through choices in terms of, you know, what kinds of classes that kids want to take and should and need to take, because we have a wide variety of students entering the school district. Overcrowding was the second point. With regard to overcrowding, I mean, I really see okay, sorry.
I know. It's a lot to answer in 1 minute. Your turn.
Okay. So again, I'm not a current board member, but it's my understanding, and I've seen Wayne and Madhu take leadership on this, that in the last 2.5 years, a new reading intervention program has been put in place in the district to identify, starting in kindergarten, those children who are reading significantly below grade level, and to put in place early on the kinds of interventions and supports that will really help bring them up to grade level and support their success. And from what I've seen, the data from the district on the early results of that program show that this program is really helping children to make strides in a way that will establish the foundation for them, for a far wider group of our students towards success in the upper grades. So that is a great success to build upon, I believe, with ongoing interventions for children in 4th and 5th grade and beyond.
Thank you. And Wayne.
Whole lot here, so I'm going to focus on the achievement gap. And I'm going to focus starting with 2006, when I got on the board, 2012, when I was joined by Madhu. Really strong priority to hold ourselves accountable on, yes, the numbers, which flawed as though they are, we got to do it. And so we worked hard, board members, starting from the beginning when I was on the board and continuing with excellent new board members like Madhu. And yep, we have made very significant progress. The gap between ourselves and our peer districts and associated gaps connected to race declined sharply in elementary school, essentially zeroing out with regard to our peer districts. And with regard to middle school and high school, narrowed very significantly. When I became president this year, a huge, you might say the biggest thing, is figuring out how can we move things forward without the divisive and in some ways sidetracking debate on whether there should be levels or not, and so on and so forth. Thus, the access and choice approach. That's been said.
Thank you. Okay, so now we'll go back down the table, and I'm assuming this is the better question for you to answer. Please give a specific example of what you would do differently to address the above challenge, i.e. achievement gap and overcrowding. So Dorcas.
I made reference earlier to the importance of looking systemically as a community to how we manage our attitudes, beliefs, and behaviors. The whole premise of the access and equity policy is that we are making a promise that we will guarantee every student is treated fairly and equally in terms of their ability to participate in all levels of academic curricular programming. In order to do that, we have to address the training that is needed in our community at every level to be inclusive and to manage our unconscious bias, or this program and policy will continue to not be acted upon in our district.
Thank you. Anne Marie?
Our district's top priority must be to engage, challenge, and enable growth for every single student. I'm hesitating because I still haven't figured out why we would compare ourselves to someone else and how our gap was okay because it matched someone else's gap. These are our neighbors, these are my kids' friends, these are the kids we all drive around, we have over to our houses. Closing this gap is not about race on the top. It's an indicator of a deeper, district-wide problem of ineffective approaches to engagement, a problem that does transcend race and it impacts all students. We need to establish effective and timely oversight by the board to ensure that the district uses cohesive, transparent, and a fair approach for assessing the progress of each child that drives appropriate placement recommendations. Thank you.
Thank you. Alyssa?
Hi. The previous board has not had success with access and equity, and that's why the policy had to be put in place. We have 3 failing schools. We have 3 schools on the focus school list. From special education services to math placement to equal access, the district has not implemented the policies that were already in place to promote access and equity. Our ultimate goal is to get rid of all the levels and allow students who want the ability to take AP courses. Many other districts do just that, and the students do really well. We believe that our students can do the same. The math scholars that we spoke to the other night at the Student Summit begged us to hear them say, and begged us to bring back to the board the idea that they can do this and that they want to get rid of the levels and have that access. We need to listen to the students. The students have the answers and they can figure out how to fix it.
Thank you. And now we'll skip Madhu because you had your chance, and we'll go to Marion.
Sure, great. I agree with everything that my colleague, Lisanal Spina, said, and I want to talk a little bit more about what she mentioned about our focus schools. We have 3 schools on what's known as the focus school list. These schools are Maplewood Middle School, the South Orange Middle School, and the Clinton Elementary School. Being on the focus school list with the state of New Jersey is not a good thing. It essentially means that the state is monitoring these schools very closely because they've got a problem. The problem in our 3 focus schools are all the same. They are the unacceptable achievement gap between minority and non-minority students. So here's a way to close the achievement gap. Let's get our 3 focus schools off the focus school list, which this current board told us that they were going to do, and it did not occur. When the state released its new group of focus schools earlier this year in the spring, guess what 3 schools were still on it? South Orange Middle, Maplewood Middle, and Clinton.
Thank you, Chanel.
I support what Marion and as well as my other roommate, Alyssa, has said. And in addition to that, we're charged with a big task as a community. November 3rd is going to be a very important election. And who we decide to put in these seats is going to determine the outcome of these revisited policies and the substance in which they will be designed and how they will be executed. We need to, as a community, hold our board accountable for its actions. If we say we're going to do something, then it's up to the community to be sure that it gets done. We are a diverse community. I've spoken with many of you on the campaign trail, and you are so, enthused by the reasons why you moved to the district, yet we still are perplexed that that same camaraderie doesn't lead, in our schools. And that's a problem. Our kids get it. It's not rocket science to them. They are, they see how the 2 groups or, kids are discriminated against one another. We've heard it multiple times at our student voice, and as Alyssa said, yes, we do need to listen more to our kids, and I hope that they do come to the table more at the board meetings.
Thank you. Chris?
Yep. When we talk about access and equity, we're talking about the end product when we're discussing what's going on at the high school. We really need to peel this back and again talk about what's happening in the elementary schools. We can't continue to talk about access at a higher level and complaining that we're not getting access there when we're not getting the proper engagement when the children are either in elementary and also in middle school. As we've heard, and the statements are correct, we have schools that are on the failing list. We need to make sure that we are engaging our community, and we need to make sure that everybody's accountable. And right now, that's not happening, and the board things need to change.
Thank you. Those were some good questions, and I think you answered them all very well.